Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, and welcome to another episode of Buha's Block. On today's show, we're going to be doing a Deandre Ayton film breakdown, looking at the strengths and weaknesses of LA's new starting center. LA officially signed him to a 2-year, $16.6 million deal after Ayton agreed to a buyout with the Portland Trailblazers on his $35.6 million deal. I think at this point, he's a well-known commodity, the number one pick in the 2018 draft, taken ahead of the likes of Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Jaren Jackson Jr., a highly talented, skilled, gifted, and productive big man, though also a polarizing player at times, a player that people have questioned the motor, the motivation. Lakers are getting a player who has started his career averaging a double-double in all 7 seasons, and he's one of only 4 players over the past 7 seasons to average a double-double in each of those 7 seasons, joining Giannis Antetokounmpo, Rudy Gobert, and Nikola Vucevic. So again, he is a very talented and productive player, but there are some questions as to how he can fit in a winning environment. All things considered, I think this was the best the Lakers could do in free agency given their financial resources. And when comparing it to potentially trading for a center, I think this was the best they could do without giving up a first-round pick or a swap or Dalton Connect, etc. So I mean, I'm going to bring this up here. For those who have been watching and listening for a bit, you know, I had a center offseason ranking that I was working on entering free agency, looking at potential free agent targets, potential trade targets, and I ended up scrapping that, though I did talk through the list a little bit on some episodes and some lives. But I want to bring up this checklist that I had going into that process of the type of player that I feel like the Lakers need at that starting center spot. I'm going to go through some of the criteria here. So good pick and roll partner, in parentheses, screening, timing, etc. So he's got to have the rhythm of playing pick and roll with a Luka, with an Austin, with a LeBron, rim runner and lob threat, rim protector, versatile defender who can fit into JJ's defensive schemes, good to great rebounder on both ends, capable post scorer at least against mismatches at a minimum, strong, tough, and physical, healthy and available, under 30 years old, a multi-year solution, and then some optional skills, 3-point shooting, ball handling, passing chops. Now, I would say that Ayton checks almost every single box here. I think the 2 boxes that are uncertain are sometimes the physicality isn't there or to the level that it needs to be, and the health has been an issue. He has not played in 70 games since his rookie season, so that's 6 straight seasons under 70 games. Over the past 2 seasons in Portland, only played 95 games. Overall, looking at the rest of this, as a pick and roll partner, rim runner, lob threat, rim protector, versatile defender, good to great rebounder, capable post scorer, under 30 years old, a potential multi-year solution. Ayton checks all those boxes. And I think that's really important when looking at his fit with the Lakers, especially through the lens of only making $8.1 million. And I will lay out the reasons why, looking at his scouting report and then looking at some film on him. So let's just get into it here. I took the feedback on the last scouting report, so I changed up the font. And I did 2 separate slides, one on strengths, one on weaknesses, made the font a bit bigger. Hopefully it's clear. If you guys want, I can even condense the bullet points to be like a few words per line and only do maybe like 5 to 6. I just wanted to show you guys the notes that I took and how I boiled it down to about 9 to 10 key points in terms of strengths and weaknesses. So Deandre Ayton, 27 years old, technically 26, but about to turn 27. 7 feet tall, 252 pounds, has a 7'6" wingspan, which is giant. Signed a 2-year, $16.6 million deal with the Lakers with a player option on the second year, and he has played 7 seasons in the NBA. In terms of strengths, he is the most offensively gifted center that LA could have realistically signed or traded for, and they nabbed him for just over $8 million. Even if it wasn't plan A necessarily, it was more of a plan B contingency. It ended up working out for them. As far as Ayton's game, he can roll, pop, catch and shoot, more so in the mid-range, post up, drive, and cut/dive. So he could do basically everything offensively. And I think that's a key here. I will show you the different ways that he can attack defenders, the different ways that he can function within the Lakers offense. He immediately becomes the best pick and roll partner that Luka has played with in LA. He's one of the NBA's most efficient roll man scorers. He's a legit rim running lob threat with an array of moves around the basket and a soft touch. He is one of the better finishers in the NBA. And I think that's something that's going to be unlocked at an even higher level with the Lakers playing alongside Luka, LeBron, and Austin. 3 really good passers, and in the case of Luka and LeBron, 2 of the best passers, not only in the NBA currently, but of all time. So I think they're going to find ways to maximize Ayton's versatility and athleticism and size on the offensive end. He is an elite mid-range shooter who's dangerous around the elbows and the middle of the floor. He is one of the most efficient short roll scorers. So not only is he capable of rolling to the rim, catching a lob or catching the ball, doing a little post move, a little hook shot, but he is an efficient short roll scorer. So he can hit runners and floaters and has these little mid-range shots in between like 8 to 15 feet that he knocks down at a very high level. So that is another element of his game. I think he can help anchor Luka, LeBron, and Austin-centric bench lineups. So it gives JJ a player who can be a number 2 option in those types of lineups, and just gives him some optionality in terms of how he wants to build out some of the bench units. Defensively, Ayton is mainly a drop big, but he is capable of playing up to touch and even switching onto perimeter players. Portland used him in a deep drop, which really discouraged him from getting up to the 3-point line and contesting or switching. But in some of the film that I'll be breaking down, you will see what it looks like when he's playing a little bit higher up or what it looks like when he is switching on to perimeter guys. So I think that is something that JJ can do. And I think there'll be some flexibility there as well in terms of the defensive scheme. He's a solid post defender who leverages his 7'6" wingspan well to contest and using that length more so than his strength because he can be overpowered by some of the bigger, stronger post players. He improves the Lakers' rim protection and defensive rebounding. He had one of his better rim protection seasons last year. Granted, it was in only 40 games, but he's averaged 7+ defensive rebounds every season of his career and 10+ rebounds every season of his career, and is an upgrade over Jackson in both regards as a rim protector and a defensive rebounder. And to take it back a little bit, he was the starting center on a finals team, that 2021 Suns team that lost to the Bucks. He was also the starter on a 64-win team, that 2022 Suns team that lost in the second round to Luka and Dallas. And he was a playoff riser in both of those postseasons. If you look at his regular season numbers and his postseason performance, his numbers increased across the board, his efficiency increased, and he was a more productive playoff performer. So he has it in him. It has been a few years, but we have seen the peak version of Ayton be a very useful player at the highest levels. And final thing here, he's effectively on an expiring contract with a lot of doubters to quiet. There have been a lot of people who have come out and been skeptical of Ayton making an impact with the Lakers or just his fit in a winning situation. So with that player option on the second year, I would assume that Ayton wants to overachieve, to exceed expectations and opt out and get a multi-year deal with the Lakers or with someone else next summer. And for him to do that, he's going to have to buy into the role that the Lakers are asking of him. He's shown he could do it before, and if he does that, I think he'll be in a good position to get a multi-year deal next summer. Looking at Ayton's weaknesses, as I mentioned before, he hasn't played 70 games in a season since his rookie season, so it's been 6 straight years of missing at least 13 games per season. He's only played 95 over the past 2. He's more of a finesse big who often avoids contact and physicality. He has a tendency to settle for jumpers instead of attacking the rim/paint. He's never averaged more than 3 free throw attempts per game, despite averaging 30+ minutes every season of his career. And this stat shocked me. He shot 0 free throws last season on his 52 post-ups per second spectrum, which is just wild to think about. You look at some of the other top scoring bigs in the post, and they all were 20, 30, 40 free throws. So for him to shoot 0 free throws on his 52 post-ups show that a lot of his post-ups result in him taking turnarounds and fadeaways or avoiding contact rather than initiating it or at least drawing it. He can struggle with decision-making and processing. He's had more turnovers than assists in each of his 7 seasons. So I think you want to limit his passing and his decision making. You don't want him to be making quick decisions on the move or in traffic. I'm going to show some turnovers of his where when he's driving or he's in a crowd, double team, triple team, that's where he can rush some of these passes that get stolen or get thrown out of bounds. And you want to limit his processing and make him more of a scorer and more of a finisher. Passing is not a strength of his game. Then defensively, his motor, particularly on the defensive end, can be inconsistent. He can be undisciplined defensively, falling for shot and ball fakes, and then getting blown by on the perimeter or having to foul the ball handler because they get by him. He can rely on his length more than his footwork in ISOs and switches, allowing ball handlers to easily create separation for jumpers. So sometimes they can almost miscalculate how much space there is between him and the ball handler. And that allows them, if they're shifty, if they're crafty, they can hit step backs or just even rise up with where they're at and drain a jumper in his face. He's not much of a defensive playmaker, low block and steal percentages. And as I mentioned in the strengths part, it's been 3 seasons since his peak numbers in Phoenix in 2021 and 2022. Can he get back to that? He's young enough to, but it's not guaranteed. Sometimes players peak early to mid-20s and never get back to that level. I think playing with the Lakers and playing with Luka, LeBron, and Austin, he is well positioned to get back to being that player. Those are the best playmakers he's played with outside of Chris Paul earlier in his career. So I think there's a real chance we see a major bounce back to the Phoenix version of Deandre Ayton. But again, these things are never guaranteed. And following his respective exits in Phoenix and Portland, there were reports questioning his maturity and motivation. In Phoenix, there was an ESPN report. In Portland, there was just that athletic report. And I'm going to stay out of this part of it because I've not reported on this. I know there was some pushback from Portland in terms of his conduct there and his relationship with Donovan Clingan and taking him under his wing. So I felt like I had to note this because this has been in the discourse around Ayton and there is a reputation that precedes him. But I also think with the context of the Lakers being a team with title aspirations, his relationship with Luka Doncic, and him, as I mentioned earlier, effectively being on an expiring contract, if he wants to earn more money next summer and sign a multi-year deal, like I think he's going to be buying into everything the Lakers ask of him. And we're going to see the most productive version of him that we've seen in multiple seasons. But just wanted to note this, felt like it would be disingenuous to not at least note that there have been questions about his buying into the dirty work and some of the things with maturity or motivation. But again, not breaking that down in the film. Speaking of the film, let's get into it. We're going to be starting with Ayton's strengths. So I want to look at Ayton's rolling and lob threat ability because I think that's going to be the most applicable to his role with the Lakers. So you see here a low pick and roll with Scoot Henderson around the free throw line. With the floor spaced, Ayton's able to get downhill and easily dunk that. This time, a higher pick and roll with Anthony Simons catches the ball on the short roll, passes to Toumani Camara, gets cut off, then throws the lob to Ayton, who catches it with one hand and finishes. Another lob against Phoenix, sets a screen for Scoot, gets downhill and actually catches the ball in traffic past KD and Mason Plumlee and dunks it. So you see a variety of lob types here. And a couple more against the Clippers. Another one with Scoot, gets downhill, finishes the lob over Zubats one-handed. And then the Blazers get a steal, and it's going to lead to a pick and roll opportunity with Toumani Camara and Deandre Ayton. And Ayton's going to get the back seal against Derrick Jones Jr. and go up for the lob. So this is more him punishing a mismatch. But it's not just as a lob threat. We're going to see him here catch the ball on the roll and finish over Maxi Kleber for the and one. Only 7 and ones last year. This was one of them for Ayton. but that is the type of play I think we could see a lot of with the Lakers. And then when he's not rolling hard to finish a lob or finish at the rim, you'll see a lot of these little floaters in that mid-range area. This is a shot he excels in, consistently shoots in the high 40s, low to mid 50s in, which is an elite mark. And because of his size and his high release point, he can get this up against most defenders. On this possession, this is another one you'll see a lot. He likes to roll into the free throw line area and just rise up for a mid-range jumper. It's like kind of in between a pop and a roll. He doesn't pop out to the three-point line. Here's another example against Miami. The big thing here is the timing, and you can see he has mastered the timing of how he holds the screen and just a little pick and roll dance. Another example against the Timberwolves, he is trailing the play and then catches it at the free throw line and drills it over Rudy Gobert. If he creates enough of a gap, and you see here, he more so pops and then catches the ball, takes a couple dribbles and gets downhill. Bad help defense by the Nuggets there, but it shows he can do more than just roll or pop. He can drive the ball when he has a lane. Here's another pick and roll example. He gets the matchup with Giannis and takes him in the post and does one dribble, goes over his left shoulder. Of note with Ayton, he shoots 55% on post-ups going to his left shoulder and just 43% going to his right shoulder. So he much prefers going to his left, and you'll see that on both sides of the floor. Another pick and roll here, catches the ball against Lopez, couple dribbles, and then goes into that spinning hook. And let's look at his post game. He's going to flash, make contact with Goga, and then hit that turnaround fadeaway that he loves to take when in the middle of the floor. Here's another example against OKC. We see Caruso fronting him. He fights Caruso, gets the ball, and goes up quickly for the little hook shot. So he is capable of scoring over mismatches. And I think that's a big thing here that differentiates him from other potential lob threats and rolling threats, is that he can score against mismatches and he can punish those in a way that some of the other potential center targets the Lakers were looking at couldn't quite do it. Here is another example against Obi Toppin and the Pacers. Fights in for position, catches the ball, one dribble, and dunks it on Furpy's head. And then let's look at his passing. His passing is not a strength, to be clear, but he can make simple reads like this on the short roll, where if you give him a 4-on-3 advantage, he will find the open shooter. Again, I don't think you want to overcomplicate things, but he can make simple reads like that. And then this is an action that the Lakers have ran that I think you could see it with some combination of Luka, Austin, and LeBron. I would like LeBron as the guy in the corner coming off of the handoff from Ayton, but you could have Austin or Luka bringing the ball up, then the other one on the wing, Ayton goes up, and if there's a pick and roll opportunity, you go into that. If not, like on this possession, you go into the delay corner action where it is LeBron coming up, going into a handoff with Ayton. So because the Lakers have multiple ball handlers who can function as primary guys in the pick and roll, and such a versatile and gifted pick and roll scorer in Ayton, I think that combination is going to be lethal. And then final couple ones here. There are understandably questions about Ayton's motor, but I saw a lot of offensive rebounds where he was fighting like-sized guys or guys who are really good defensive rebounders. Here he gets an offensive rebound against Rudy Gobert. And then here is another example against the Kings where he's fighting against Domantas Sabonis, catches the offensive rebound and goes up, dunks it with authority. So I'm going to highlight some of the motor concerns a little bit later, but I think Ayton, when engaged, and that's, I think sometimes the frustrating thing is you see the physicality, the skill, the ability when he is engaged, when he wants to do it. It's just a matter of how often and how consistently does he want to do it. But he's certainly a capable offensive rebounder, as we saw there. In terms of offensive weaknesses, now let's get into some of the finesse play, some of the settling with jumpers. So first one, he has the ball against the Timberwolves, resets the offense, goes into a pick and roll and catches the ball. The shot clock is winding down, but he didn't need to just fling this up. They still had a few seconds left. They end up scoring on the play because Kamara gets the offensive rebound, but you'll see teams when Ayton puts the ball on the floor start to swarm him that is part of the scouting report against him is you can strip the ball, poke the ball loose. And I think sometimes his shot selection or how he responds to that defensive attention can be improved upon. I did not love that shot. Again, there was 4 or 5 seconds left. So you could argue maybe he should have taken it, but I think there was a better look. On this one, we're going to see him go into a side pick and roll with Jeremy Grant. This is that short roll floater that he loves. Walker Kessler just blocks it. And again, you know Ayton is going to do this. If you're paying attention to the scouting report against him, he's often going to roll into that middle space and try to shoot a jumper or a little floater. So I think with the Lakers, that'll probably change, and he'll be more of a guy who puts pressure on the rim, more of a lob threat, or more of a deep seal guy who gets some deep post-ups. But if he's going to take this shot consistently, as we're going to see it again here, like skilled rim protectors and shot blockers can affect it, can block it, can force air balls. So that was a couple of misses against the Jazz. Then here is a post-up opportunity where he just goes into that turnaround and just airballs it. And you'll see he's got several of these where they're short or they're air balls. And sometimes he just predetermines what he wants to do and avoids the contact, tries to create that separation, and it just ends up being a bad miss. Here's another one where he comes off a screen, catches the ball against Duren, runs out of real estate, and just decides to settle for the fadeaway, barely grazes the rim there. So I think in general, some of his shot selection can be better. It's a solid shot for him. I just would like to see him be a little bit more aggressive with trying to get to the rim. Here is another example against the Clippers where he's got the mismatch against James Harden. James Harden's actually a pretty good post defender. That was always the thing during his MVP heyday of like he's actually a stout post defender. He's got a strong base. But even though Ayton scores here, I wanted to show you like it's not just about him missing or airballing or whatever. You would like to see him go to a better move here than just shooting this 8 to 10 foot hook shot that he's altering because of Harden's post defense. I think he could be more aggressive. That's the word I keep coming back to. Here's a pick and roll opportunity against the Kings where he catches it in the short roll, drives against Sabonis, and then contorts his body here. I don't like this. I'd like to see him use his shoulder. Even if he picks up an offensive foul, just get to the rim and try to initiate some contact. Instead, he tries to avoid the contact and contort his body in a way that he just misses this shot badly. I mentioned his turnovers. Like this is the most common turnover type you'll see where he hesitates, then he starts to overthink and the defense swarms against him. He kind of loses the ball and then he throws a bad pass that is intercepted. Here is one against the Lakers, actually, where he is spacing the floor in the corner, catches it around the dunker spot, and the Lakers converge on him around the rim, and he gets some contact, but he also gets the ball stripped, poked loose, and he turns the ball over. So I think he could be stronger with the ball, but I also think he's got to be careful with driving into crowds because that often results in him turning the ball over. And then here is a simple DHO play where he just throws the ball out of bounds, and you'll see several of these where there's just a miscommunication with him and the ball handler, but sometimes he just misreads the action. Here's another one where he just lofts his ball up for the defender to get out in transition. Now let's turn our attention to the defensive end where we will look at his strengths. First one here, he is in drop coverage, switches on to Naz Reid, does a good job dancing with him, forces up the contested hook shot, and catches the rebound. And I think that is the Ayton upside of him being a versatile defender who can play up the touch or catch the ball handler, dance with them with his footwork, his agility, and his length, and then force them into tough shots and then finish the playoff with a defensive rebound. Here is another possession against the Wolves where he helps contest the nah floater and then corrals the rebound. Gets some impressive clips against Giannis in particular, and they go way back to that 2021 finals. But you'll see here he switches onto Giannis, forces him into the turnover, and then flexes afterward. And here is one against Jamal Murray, and this is an important defensive possession because We know that they're probably going to have to go through Denver at some point. So he catches Murray, switches on to him, and then dances with him a bit, forces him into the contested layup, which ends up in a shot clock violation. Here is another play against Giannis, where it's a Giannis, Brook Lopez pick and roll. Ayton switches on to him, stays with him on the drive, and then blocks the ball out of bounds. He's a big left-handed shot blocker, which makes sense given most players are right-handed. Here he is switched on to Zion, stays with him on the drive, which we know is difficult to do, and then blocks him. And then here's another one where Jokic is just bringing the ball up in transition, gets a drag screen from Christian Braun and gets blocked by Ayton at the rim. And we've been looking at his pick and roll defense primarily, and then some of his switching ability, but let's look at his post defense. So on this play, he fights Embiid for positioning. He is fronting him, jockeying. Then he pulls the chair and Embiid ends up traveling. And final one, this is the opening play in a game against the Mavericks. He is jockeying for position with Daniel Gafford, forces him to catch the ball further away. Gafford goes to a spin move, runs out of real estate, and Ayton just forces a contested look that hits the side of the backboard. So that's an example of him using his length well in the post and sticking with. Gafford's not a good post scorer, but it's more so about the way that Ayton approaches it there, where he pushes him out, stays big, and then forces him into a contested look. Now, let's look at the weaknesses defensively. And the first one I'm going to pull up here is a drive from Zion. So this is another play where he switches on to Zion. And if you look at his hips, I think this is the big thing with Ayton. Look at how he opens up his hips. He allows, he almost braces for the contact with Zion. And by doing so, he shrinks and turns to the side. And that allows Zion to get the step on him. So this is what I was talking about in the scouting report, where I say that he sometimes doesn't take the best angles or use his footwork well and tries to leverage his length more and ends up getting blown by and then fouling Zion. Here's an example against Devin Booker, someone he's very familiar with given they played together for multiple years. Switches on to Booker and then almost gets beat backdoor, but doesn't. Now that he's on the ball, you just look at the angle that he takes. He just opens up and plays matador defense here and allows Booker to get downhill. So I think he's got to be careful. There are possessions where he's good at it, possessions where he is not so good at it. And these are some examples of when he gets beat on the perimeter. It's often because of the angles he's taking with his feet and his hips. Here's a play against the Lakers. Dalton sets a good drag screen and then just stands there and kind of botches the play, allows Ayton to hang with AD. But Ayton tries to go for the block and falls for the head fake, which allows AD to get the step on him and then forces Ayton to foul him. So I think this is something he's really got to work on in terms of being disciplined defensively, because you see when he doesn't foul a lot, but when he does foul, it is often because he's falling for these head fakes, ball fakes, or a guy's just able to get by him. Now, in all of the center defensive film I've watched, Ivica Zubac has shredded everyone, which is just a testament to how good he is offensively. But here you're going to see he's going to drive, multiple dribbles, get to that middle hook shot. And Ayton can be pushed around by some of these centers that are 280 plus, like a Zubac, an Embiid, a Jokic. He can just be dislodged with a couple shoulders to the chest. People bring up the lack of effort with Ayton, and I'm going to show you a few examples of this. So here he contests, and then he just stands there. And I think this is a big issue with him at times, is the second effort of he will contest a shot and then not look to jump for the rebound or box someone out, make contact for the rebounds. Here's another example where he contests the Jaden McDaniels layup and does a really good job of forcing that, but he's got to get back into the play here. And it is a bang, bang, quick thing, but that is what it takes at the highest levels of NBA defense. And once again, he just stands there on the second effort and allows McDaniels to get his own rebound and put the ball in. And there was a game earlier in the season that the Blazers lost by 42 to the Jazz. I've already shown a couple clips from that game. Blazers coach Chauncey Billups called out Ayton's spirit, and he only played him 2 minutes in the second half. And this was a play from that game where you see it's a pick and roll with Svi and Walker Kessler, and Ayton just, he has this tendency to sometimes not corral the ball handler. And I don't know how much of that's Portland's scheme versus his tendencies, but there you have to stop the ball. And it was bad help defense, to be clear, from the other Blazers, but you have guys who are one pass away from three-point shooters. And Ayton, it's not his responsibility necessarily to stop Kessler there. He has to stop the ball. That is always the number one rule with defense, is stop the ball. In summation, I am high on the fit with Deandre Ayton and the Lakers. You don't get guys who average 15 and 10 with mid to high 50s shooting for $8.1 million. This signing is not without risks in terms of how things ended in Phoenix or how things ended in Portland, some of the concerns or questions or criticisms of Ayton's game, but he is a highly skilled, talented, gifted, and productive center. He is much better than Jackson Hayes, and that alone is a win for the Lakers. And so I think this is a golden opportunity for Deandre Ayton to prove a lot of people wrong. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it ever were going to happen, him playing with Luka, LeBron, and Austin, this is a situation where they could theoretically maximize Deandre Ayton's potential and capabilities on both sides of the ball. The Lakers desperately need him, and they need him to be really good. They need him to play the best basketball of his career and buy into his role. And we will see in a couple of months if he's willing to do that. So I hope you guys enjoyed that breakdown. I hope you guys learned a little bit more about Ayton's game. If there's any other observations you have, would love to read them in the comment section on YouTube or your preferred audio platform of choice. Would also love some more feedback. This is the second film breakdown I've done, but that'll do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back later in the week. I will talk to you soon.